I didn't come to Meridian University to be famous. I came to disappear. In my hometown, my face was a rumor generator. Too striking, too easy for strangers to claim they knew my story. People invented boyfriends, scandals, sponsors, and sins the way they invented weather. When my grandmother died, the whispers didn't pause for grief. They only changed flavor. Pretty girls always land on their feet, someone said at the market, as if beauty were a parachute instead of a target. I promised her at the crematorium that I would build a life no one could yank away with a joke. So I sold the tiny house she left me, packed a single suitcase, and took the train east with a scholarship letter and a plan. Camouflage myself with wealth. Brand names are armor in a city that treats poverty like a contagious disease. I studied the catalogs the way other students studied anatomy. I learned the quiet vocabulary of handbags, watch faces, tailoring, and the difference between something expensive and something that merely screams. If I could look like I belonged, maybe I could finally breathe long enough to finish my degree. On the first day in the dormitory, I walked in wearing a simple ivory dress and a borrowed coat that carried the faint scent of a department store. My roommates, 3 girls with sleek hair and hands that moved like they had never scrubbed a floor, looked me up and down, and their eyes shifted from appraisal to caution. That part went as expected. What I didn't expect were the words. They appeared in the air, hovering near the window like translucent subtitles only I could see. At first I thought it was stress, the kind that turns light into halos. Then the sentences flickered, stacked, and scrolled as if my life had become a live stream. She's trying so hard. Fake rich girl. Wait for her to get exposed. Her body is insane, but she's still a side character. Anyone else feel sorry for her? The last line pulsed with a little heart icon, absurdly cheerful. I stared until my eyes watered, and the lines didn't vanish. I blinked, waved my hand through them, and felt nothing but air. My roommates kept chatting about a fall collection, oblivious. I swallowed and smiled as if I wasn't watching my sanity peel. That night, when the dorm lights went out, the comments came back, drifting above my pillow with the slow patience of snow. I tried to sleep. I tried to pretend I hadn't heard the world labeling me a supporting role. Then a sentence popped brighter than the rest. If she's going to play the villain, at least pay her. I laughed under my breath, bitter, and the laugh turned into a cough when something cold and heavy landed in my palm. In the dark, a golden lollipop rested against my skin, glossy and unmistakably real. It weighed like guilt and rang softly when I tapped it with my fingernail. I sat up so fast my blanket slid off the bed. The lollipop didn't dissolve. It didn't flicker. It existed. My heart hammered. If those floating remarks could drop objects into my hands, then the universe wasn't mocking me. It was offering me a crooked kind of leverage. I didn't know why I was seeing them, and I didn't know who was typing them, but the mechanism was clear enough to test. The next morning, I slipped the lollipop into a pouch and took it to a small gold exchange near the subway. The owner waited, frowned at the strange shape, and offered me a number that made my throat go dry. I walked out with a receipt and enough cash to pay my dorm fees for the semester. On the sidewalk, the air shimmered with new lines. No way, it worked. She cashed it out. Iconic. Don't get cocky, side girl. I kept my face neutral, but inside something unclenched. Money didn't heal the past, yet it gave me time, and time was the only thing I'd never been able to buy. I decided to treat the comments like weather reports. Noisy, unreliable, sometimes useful, and never worth praying to. If I had to be someone's entertainment, I would monetize the stage. Meridian's orientation week was a parade of clubs, recruitment, and soft predation. Seniors handed flyers like bait. Student council members walked in matching blazers, smiling like they'd been trained in a lab. During the mandatory military-style training on the athletic field, I heard a group of second-year boys behind me discussing my body as if I were a menu. I could have stayed silent the way I used to. Silence had once kept me alive, but it had also taught predators that my boundaries were negotiable. I turned around, smiled politely, and held up the fountain pen clipped to my collar. Interesting, I said. This pen records audio. Their faces tightened. One of them laughed too loudly and asked if I was joking. I clicked the cap, and the pen blinked once. It had been another gift, an upgrade someone in the comments had demanded for me, as if they were shopping in a game. I let the boys hear their own words play back, clear as glass. Then I said softly, $200 each for emotional damages. Transfer now, Or I post the recording to the campus confession board and tag your girlfriends. They called me crazy. Then they paid. Their transfers chimed on my phone like small victories. The comments erupted. She's savage. She's blackmailing them, lol. No, that's self-defense. I didn't care what they called it. I cared that my hands stopped shaking for the first time in years. After training, my roommates suddenly decided I was hilarious. People love courage when it protects them too. They introduced me to the campus economy, who sold access to lecture notes, who got internships through family, which cafes were for locals, and which ones were for outsiders. I listened, nodded, and built a map in my head. My scholarship covered tuition, not survival. The comment gifts could cover survival if I played my part with precision. The first rule I wrote in my notebook was simple. Never ask for gifts. If I begged the invisible audience, I would become their puppet. And I had spent too much of my life being tugged. Instead, I performed competence. I studied hard. I spoke calmly. I let cruelty roll off me like rain while I collected proof. The second rule: launder everything through legitimacy. If gold fell into my hands, it would become tuition payments, a lease, equipment, and eventually a business. A week later, my roommates squealed about the freshman crown vote, a popularity contest dressed up as school spirit. The winner got prize money, a hosting role at the welcome gala, and a direct channel into the student council's event team. In my previous life, if you can call a life without choices, a life someone had submitted my photo without asking, and the attention had nearly killed me. This time, I stared at the poster and calculated. Access mattered more than applause. If I joined the event team, I could control where cameras pointed and how rumors moved. I agreed to enter, but I refused a professional shoot. I submitted one clean photo taken by the window in our dorm. My hair loose, my expression light, my hands empty. The comments flashed, suspicious. She's playing innocent. Wait until the rich heroine exposes her. She's pretty. I hate it. I ignored them. That evening, as my roommates practiced poses, a small gold charm shaped like a rabbit dropped into my hand. My roommates gasped. I lied smoothly, telling them it was a family keepsake from overseas, and watched their envy melt into admiration. One of them begged to buy it. I offered it as a gift the way wealthy girls do casually, as if money is air. She insisted on paying. The transfer hit my account before she finished her sentence. The comments screamed, "She's flipping gifts into cash. Capitalism queen. This is cheating." I smiled and kept going. The crown vote escalated quickly, because Meridian students were bored and hungry for narrative. The top-ranked candidate was Celine Gao, a legacy student with a charity foundation and a face that belonged on billboards. Everyone called her the campus princess, like it was a title granted by God. Selene didn't speak much. She let other people narrate her. Her best friend, Ivy, did the speaking for her. Ivy had a talent for turning suspicion into public fact. "That freshman is weird," I heard her say near the cafeteria line. She arrived with designer luggage, but her registration address is a rural county. The words were delivered like gossip, but they were a knife. My stomach tightened. My rural address was the one thing I couldn't erase. The comments jittered. "Expose time. Our princess will crush her. Leave the poor girl alone." I went back to my dorm and stared at my laptop until the screen blurred. Wealth could hide my accent, my shoes, my posture, but not my history. I needed a story that was true enough to survive scrutiny and vague enough to refuse inspection. I built it carefully. I was a scholarship student with a small family trust managed by a guardian. I used that money to avoid being targeted. It wasn't completely false. My guardian was the invisible audience, and the trust fell from the air in gold. I refused to explain more. The more you explain, the more people smell blood. During the second week of classes, a basketball flew across the field during training and nearly hit my head. I stepped back, but my ankle caught on uneven turf, and I fell. A hand grabbed my arm and yanked me upright before my skull met concrete. The person who caught me was a tall boy in a student council jacket, breathless and sweating. His name tag read, Jamin Park, events chair. He apologized as if he had thrown the ball himself. His forearm was scraped raw from sliding, and his wristwatch, sleek, expensive, quiet, flashed in the sunlight. His eyes flicked to my knee where blood beaded. "Let me take you to the clinic," he said. Around us, students stared. Cameras rose. The comments flooded my vision. "That's the male lead. He's not supposed to touch anyone? Why is he touching her? Back off, side girl. I wanted to laugh, because their script was so confident. I didn't believe in destiny, but I believed in patterns. Rich boy with responsibilities, poor girl with a target on her back, a misunderstanding designed to ignite jealousy. I stood, brushed dirt off my dress, and said, I can walk. Jamin looked at me like I had spoken a language he hadn't learned. You're bleeding, he insisted. I've bled before, I replied, and kept my voice level. He followed anyway, hovering too close, apologizing too much. In the clinic, while the nurse cleaned my knee, he stared at the floor, jaw clenched with what looked like guilt. I wasn't trying to make you a spectacle, he said. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, spectacles happen when people think they own the story. The line startled him. He looked up, and for a second, the polished student council leader was just a boy. You don't want attention, he said slowly. Then why enter the crown vote? I met his gaze. Because I want access, I said. Honesty, used sparingly, can feel like power. Jamin's mouth twitched, almost a smile. That's the first honest answer I've heard all week, he admitted. After that day, he began appearing wherever I was, cafeteria, library, the walkway outside my lecture hall. He always had a reason, a schedule question, a clipboard item, a stack of event guidelines he thought I might find interesting. The comments treated him like a prize and me like a thief. I treated him like a variable. Variables can be useful, but they can also explode if you don't respect the equation. Meanwhile, the crown vote turned ugly. Someone posted anonymously on the confession board, vote for Mira Lynn and get paid. My vote count spiked overnight, from a few thousand to absurd numbers. My roommates shrieked with excitement. I felt only dread. Paid votes meant scandal. Scandal meant investigation. Investigation meant my rural address turning into a noose. The comments shouted, divided. She's bribing. The princess is framing her. Plot twist. The council boy did it. I went to the student council office and asked for an audit. Heads turned. People didn't expect the accused to walk into the courtroom. Jamin looked up from a table of gala ribbons, stunned. You want an audit? He repeated. Yes, I answered. I want the voting logs. I want IP addresses. I want a statement that I didn't authorize any payments. Jamin's assistant, a girl with sharp eyeliner, smirked. That's bold, she said, as if boldness were a crime. Jamin's gaze hardened. We'll do it, he decided. The investigation took 3 days. While it ran, Ivy invited me publicly, sweetly, to a tea talk with Celine in the student center. It was a trap wrapped in porcelain. The whole campus would watch, and any stumble would be clipped into a meme. My roommates begged me to go. If you refuse, you look guilty, they argued. They were right. I went. Celine sat at the table like a painting. Her smile was polite, distant, rehearsed. Ivy sat beside her like a guard dog, nails tapping the cup. Mira, Celine said gently, people say you're being misunderstood. The word misunderstood floated between us like perfume. I nodded. People say many things, I answered. Ivy leaned in. We just want to clear the air, she said. It would be sad if you were using counterfeit items to manipulate your image. I felt the old panic climb my throat, the memory of being cornered in my hometown by boys who thought a girl without parents was public property. I forced my breathing to slow. Counterfeit is a legal claim, I said. Do you have proof? Ivy's eyes narrowed. Your coat, she said, pointing. That brand doesn't sell in your county. I smiled slightly. Neither do plane tickets, I replied. Yet you fly. The comment section in my vision exploded into fireworks. She snapped. That line, Celine's expression tightened for the first time. Ivy tried another angle. Your family, she said, voice sweet. Where are they? The room hummed. Cameras leaned closer. This was the real knife. I set my cup down carefully. Dead, I said, and let the word land. And I don't do grief tours for entertainment. Silence hit like a wave. Celine blinked, something like discomfort crossing her face. Ivy looked briefly uncertain. Predators hate when prey stops squirming. I stood. If you want to talk policy, I said. If you want to dissect my life, find another hobby. Then I walked away, steady, even though my hands were shaking under the table. Outside the student center, the air tasted colder. Jamin waited by the steps, holding a folder. He looked furious. "I saw that," he said. "They baited you." "They tried," I corrected. He handed me the folder. "We traced the paid vote post," he said. "It came from an account tied to Ivy's roommate. The payment link was routed through a prepaid wallet registered to Celine's foundation intern." His jaw flexed. "It was meant to make you look corrupt." My stomach dropped, then steadied. "Proof is an anchor." "Will you release the findings?" I asked. Jamin nodded. "I will," he said, "even if it makes enemies." "It will," I warned. He met my eyes. "I'm already surrounded by enemies," he said. "At least this one will be honest." That sentence cracked something in me. Not trust, not love, but a cautious respect. He wasn't saving me to look heroic. He was choosing a side because he believed the rules should mean something. The next day, the council posted the audit summary. Ivy's smile vanished from the cafeteria. Celine released a statement about regrettable misconduct by associates, distancing herself without admitting guilt. The campus moved on to the next drama, as campuses do, but the damage to Celine's perfect story had been done, and the damage to my body, my constant readiness to be attacked, began to heal, one boring document at a time. With the audit behind me, I focused on building something that didn't depend on popularity. I rented a tiny off-campus studio space above a nail salon. The lease was cheap because the ceiling leaked when it rained. I fixed the leak with a bucket and duct tape. I bought a secondhand camera, lights, and a backdrop. I started producing short, faceless transformation videos. Thrifted clothes styled into clean looks, makeup shots cropped below my eyes, voiceover tips on posture and confidence. I never mentioned my real name. Online, I became Meridian, a brand that sounded like a location rather than a person. The comments in the air hated that. She's monetizing sympathy. She's going to outshine the heroine. She's still a side character. And sometimes, surprisingly, she's trying to survive. Let her. When supportive lines appeared, gold sometimes followed. A small bar, a charm, a coin stamped with a star. I sold the gold and funneled the money into invoices. The studio grew slowly, then faster. The irony was sharp. Strangers who mocked me were accidentally funding my escape. As Welcome Gala approached, Jamin asked me to host a segment. "No," I said immediately. "I don't want to be on stage." "You don't have to be," he replied. "We need someone backstage to run the live caption feed and keep the confession board from exploding mid-event. You understand the ecosystem." He was right. I understood rumor currents the way sailors understand tides. I agreed on one condition. I would have full control over the moderation team, and any harassment would be documented and forwarded to the dean. Jamin agreed without hesitation. "You're dangerous," he said, almost fond. "Only to liars," I answered. On the night of the gala, Meridian's auditorium glittered. Students wore rented suits and dresses that pinched. The stage lights made everyone look richer than they were. Celine arrived in a silver gown, photographers circling like bees. Ivy stood behind her, eyes scanning for threats. I worked backstage with a headset, watching live feeds, deleting slurs, flagging threats, and coordinating camera angles. It felt like controlling a storm with a broom. Halfway through the program, a message surged across the confession board, too fast to delete. "Mira Lynn is a fraud. Rural orphan. Bought her clothes secondhand. Here are her records." A projector on stage flickered. Someone had hacked the event deck, and my student file flashed onto the main screen. Gasps rippled through the auditorium. My chest tightened so hard I thought I would vomit. For a single second, I was 19 again in a village alley, surrounded by laughing boys, with no adult willing to step between me and humiliation. Then training took over. I yanked the Ethernet cable from the projector laptop. The screen went black. In the darkness, whispers rose, hungry and vicious. Jamin's voice came through my headset, sharp. "What happened?" "They hacked us," I said. My voice was steady. My hands were not. "I'm going on," he said. "No," I snapped. "You'll make it a romance story." He paused, then said, "Then tell me what to do." I inhaled once. "Give me 90 seconds, I said. I pulled up the incident logs on my tablet, mirrored to a backup screen. I located the rogue device injecting the slides, an unauthorized laptop connected from the left balcony. I grabbed 2 staffers and sprinted up the side stairs. My heels slipped on carpet, but I didn't slow. In the balcony, a boy with a hoodie stared at his screen, giddy. Ivy stood beside him, smiling. When she saw me, her smile sharpened. "Oh," she said. "Our fake princess is here." I didn't speak. I filmed them with my phone, capturing the laptop, the connection, Ivy's face. Then I said, loudly enough for nearby students to hear, "Step away from the device. This is tampering with a university event." Ivy laughed. "Prove it," she said. I held up my screen. "Already did," I replied. Security moved in. The boy panicked, tried to slam the laptop shut. I caught his wrist. Not violently, just firmly, the way you stop a child from touching a stove. Ivy's nails dug into my arm. "Let him go," she hissed. I looked at her, and in my vision the floating comments exploded into chaos. "Fight. Drama. Save the heroine. No, protect the girl." The noise made my temples throb. I ignored it. "You wanted the truth on a screen," I said softly to Ivy. "Congratulations. Now everyone will see yours." Security escorted the boy and Ivy down. In the main hall, Jae-min had already stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, face calm in a way that only fury can produce. "We experienced an attempted sabotage," he told the audience. "The event is paused. Please remain seated." His gaze scanned until it found me at the side curtain. I nodded once. He understood. We brought the backup projector online. This time, the first slide was mine. A timeline of harassment reports, audit results, and an incident statement official. Dry, undeniable. I didn't mention Celine. I didn't mention wealth. I didn't mention my dead grandmother. I simply showed the facts. Ivy had been linked to paid vote fraud. Ivy had been linked to the hacking attempt. Ivy had been warned before. Ivy had ignored every warning. Jae-min read the statement without drama. The audience, deprived of romance, was forced to confront something uglier. A rich girl's entitlement turning into violence. Celine's face froze in the front row. For the first time, the campus princess looked like a student trapped in consequences. After the gala, the dean's office opened an investigation. Ivy was suspended pending review. Celine's foundation was audited. Rumors still swirled, of course. Some people said I had planned it. Some said I had seduced Jae-min. Some said I was secretly wealthy anyway. But the rumors had a new problem. They couldn't erase the logs. They couldn't erase the video of Ivy at the laptop. They couldn't erase the truth that I had shut down the screen before it could become a weapon. In the quiet week after the gala, my studio channel crossed its first real milestone. Brands emailed me. Not luxury houses, those were too proud, but small companies with products and budgets. I negotiated contracts with the calm ruthlessness my grandmother would have admired. Jae-min asked to meet me at the campus lake, away from microphones and gossip. It was late evening, the water reflecting streetlights in broken lines. He stood with his hands in his pockets, blazer unbuttoned, hair damp from the fog. "You didn't crumble," he said. It wasn't a compliment, it was astonishment. "I've crumbled before," I said. "I just got tired of cleaning myself up afterward." He nodded slowly. "I owe you an apology," he said, "for following you around." I told myself it was about duty. "And it wasn't?" I asked. He exhaled. "It was also curiosity," he admitted. "You walk like someone who's already been burned." I stared at the lake. "I have," I said. The floating comments were quieter lately, as if even the invisible audience had run out of jokes. Still, a line drifted by. "Tell him your backstory." I smiled without humor. "No," I whispered. "He doesn't get that for free." Jae-min heard the whisper and misread it as dismissal. He flinched. I turned to him. "Listen," I said. "You want to help? Then help by building systems that don't require girls like me to be dramatic, to be protected." His shoulders eased, as if he had been given a task he could actually complete. "I can do that," he said. "Good," I replied. "And I'll do my part by refusing to die quietly." Spring came with exams and a softer sun. My roommates, who once judged me for breathing, now bragged about knowing me. I let them. Let people talk. Talking is cheaper than blood. One afternoon, as I left the library, I saw a familiar silhouette near the gate. A man from my hometown, older than me, shoulders broad, eyes too familiar. My vision narrowed. The air tasted like metal. The comments flashed warnings like sirens. Bad guy arc. Run. Call the male lead. My body froze, every muscle remembering. The man smiled, and the smile peeled my skin. Mira, he said, using my real name like a leash. Long time. My grandmother's death rewound in my head like a film. This was the cousin of the boy who had shoved us in the alley. This was the kind of man who knew how to find girls with no protection and call it fate. He stepped closer. Heard you got rich, he said. Thought you could share. My throat tried to close. I forced it open. You don't belong here, I said. He laughed. You don't belong anywhere, he replied. For a second, my knees went soft. Then I felt something warm and heavy in my pocket. My phone, my pepper alarm, my recorder pen, my keys, tools, proof. I wasn't 16 anymore. I didn't need to scream for help and hope someone cared. I raised my phone and started recording. State your name, I said. He blinked, thrown. What? State your name, I repeated, louder. Students nearby turned. He scowled. Why? Because you followed me onto campus, I said. Because you just threatened me. Because I'm collecting evidence. His face twisted with anger, and for a heartbeat I feared he would hit me anyway. Then a security guard approached, alerted by the attention. The man's confidence cracked. He muttered something and tried to leave. Stop, I said, and the guard listened. The man was escorted to the office. An investigation began. It wasn't cinematic. It was paperwork, interviews, and a trespass notice. But paperwork is what keeps monsters from hiding behind charm. That night, the comments floated above my bed again, quieter, almost gentle. She did it the right way. She didn't need a savior. A final line appeared, blinking like a cursor. What do you want now? I stared at it for a long time. I wanted peace. But peace is not a place you arrive. It's a habit you practice. I wanted money, but not because I loved luxury, because I loved options. I wanted my grandmother's ashes to rest in a real grave instead of a cheap locker. I wanted to graduate without begging anyone to believe my pain. I wanted to stop flinching when someone laughed. In the morning, I went to my studio and filmed a new video. No glamour, no tricks. Just my hands setting up lights, taping cables, and writing a checklist on the wall. In the voiceover, I said, when people call you fake, they're telling you they want you small. You don't have to convince them. You only have to build something that doesn't require their permission. The video went live. Comments from the internet, not the floating ones, filled my screen, messy and human. Some were cruel, some were kind. I didn't care as much as I used to. My life was no longer a story being narrated at me. It was a business plan I was executing, one invoice at a time. At the end of the semester, Jaemin sent me a message. The council had approved a new policy for event security and anonymous reporting, built from the logs we collected. It's not perfect, he wrote, but it's real. I stared at the message, then typed back, good, make it harder for the next girl. When summer arrived, I took the train back to the outskirts of my hometown, not to visit old streets, but to bring my grandmother home properly. I paid for a small plot under a tree that would shade her in the heat. I placed her urn into the earth with my own hands. No one whispered, no one watched. The sky was wide and quiet. On the ride back, the floating comments appeared one last time, dimmer than ever. Side character became main. She earned it. Don't end the season yet. I smiled softly, not at them, but at the fact that I no longer needed them. Seasons end, I whispered. I don't. In the weeks after the trespass notice, I began to understand the hidden cost of winning. People start watching for the moment you slip. The dean's office didn't accuse me, but the financial aid department sent a polite email requesting verification of external income sources because my tuition payments suddenly arrived early, in neat installments, without the usual student panic. Someone had noticed. Someone had asked questions. The city doesn't care where money comes from as long as it can tax it. Universities care because they fear scandal more than injustice. I sat in the financial aid lobby with a folder of receipts, gold exchange slips, studio invoices, sponsorship contracts, bank statements, everything legal, everything traceable. The truth behind the gold, an invisible audience throwing objects through reality, could not be printed. so I printed everything else until the paper stack felt like armor. The officer, a tired woman with glasses, flipped through my documents and raised an eyebrow. "You sold a lot of gold charms," she said. "Yes," I replied. "Family jewelry." She looked at me for a long moment, the way adults look at students when they suspect a lie but can't afford to prove it. Then she sighed. "Just keep your records," she said. "And don't accept money from anyone with a criminal reputation." I almost laughed at the irony. The only anyone paying me was a chorus of strangers behind glass. I left the office and exhaled in the hallway. The comments floated, smug. "She passed the audit. Plot armor. No, paperwork armor." I walked straight to my studio and locked the door. Not because I feared thieves, but because I needed a space where no one could watch my face. For the first time since I arrived, I let myself shake. Fear isn't dramatic. It's arithmetic. How many ways can this go wrong? How many hours until rent is due? How many people would celebrate my failure? I poured tea, forced my hands to steady, and opened a spreadsheet. I didn't stop being scared. I turned fear into a schedule. That was how my grandmother survived famine years. She once told me, "You count rice grains instead of crying." My studio's growth attracted attention from the Campus Entrepreneurship Incubator, a glossy program sponsored by real corporations. The brochure promised mentorship and connections, but I could smell the trap: public exposure. I didn't want my campus name tied to my online brand. Anonymity was my safety net. Yet the incubator offered something my gold gifts could never grant: legitimacy. If I joined, my income would look like startup funding instead of suspicious jewelry sales. So I applied under a different label: Meridian Light Studio, a general media production venture. The interview panel sat behind a long table. One professor asked about my market. Another asked about my team. I answered calmly. "My team is small because I refuse to hire people I cannot pay," I said. "My market is students who need social capital but can't buy it." A venture advisor smirked. "Social capital isn't something you sell," he said. I returned his look. "Then why do you sell networking events?" I asked. The professor on the far left coughed to hide a laugh. I was accepted with conditional support, a tiny grant, access to workshop rooms, and one assigned mentor. The mentor arrived at my studio the next day wearing loafers that cost more than my monthly rent. His name was Dr. Roland Pierce, a visiting lecturer who spoke in corporate metaphors like they were prayers. He scanned my space, the bucket under the leak, the backdrop taped to the wall. "You're resourceful," he said, tone bright, "but you'll never scale while you cling to secrecy. The public wants a protagonist. The public wants a sacrifice," I corrected. "And I'm busy." He chuckled as if I had made a joke. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "You could partner with a luxury reseller. They love stories like yours. Poor girl becomes glamorous. You become their face. They pay you a cut." My stomach twisted. It sounded too close to the old rumors. That I was someone's sponsored pet. I smiled politely. "No," I said. "My face is not for rent." Pierce's expression tightened briefly before he recovered. "Then at least let's optimize your content," he insisted. He handed me a list of viral hooks. Most involved humiliation. Reveal the thrift tags, cry on camera, stage a confrontation. Let people expose you, and then triumph. The comments in the air surged with agreement, as if Pierce were reading their script. "Yes, expose Ark. Let her cry. Trauma gets views." I stared at the list until my vision blurred. "If my pain is the product," I said softly, "then my audience owns my wounds." Pierce shrugged. "Audience ownership is just engagement," he said. I realized then that he wasn't my mentor. He was my handler. The incubator had assigned me a man who thought cruelty was marketing. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I did something more dangerous. I smiled, thanked him, and stopped inviting him back. A week later, I learned he had been advising Celine's foundation-sponsored social impact startup, a glossy project that mostly produced photos for donors. It wasn't mentorship. It was containment. If he could steer me into a humiliating narrative, Celine would remain the unchallenged princess. I decided to cut the string before it tightened. My first move was simple. I built a contract wall. Every sponsorship, every collaboration, every campus appearance required a signed agreement. No friend favors. No vague promises. If someone wanted my time, they paid in money or in protection. My second move was quieter. I recruited, not influencers, not pretty faces, but 2 students who looked like they had carried heavy things. One was Hannah Ortiz, a graphic designer with chronic insomnia and a portfolio full of sharp, clean posters. The other was Dae-hyun Kim, a computer science student who had been suspended once for hacking a professor's database to expose grade manipulation. He wasn't proud of the stunt, but he had learned from it. I didn't hire them as friends. I hired them with payroll and boundaries. Hannah redesigned my brand identity so it looked like a company, not a confession. Dae-hyun built me a security system. Encrypted backups, 2-factor authentication, and a monitoring script that flagged doxing attempts. People think women online are decorations, he said dryly. They also think universities are safe. Both beliefs are adorable. With Hannah and Dae-hyun, my studio stopped being a room with a camera. It became a machine. The more stable it became, the more the floating comments seemed frustrated, as if the invisible audience didn't enjoy watching someone get organized. Too boring. Where's the drama? Bring back the princess. I worked anyway. Then the drama came, because drama always does. In late spring, Meridian hosted an intercollegiate debate tournament. The student council wanted the event to look prestigious, so they invited donors, alumni, and local media. Celine's foundation offered to sponsor the streaming setup. It sounded like a peace offering. It was a Trojan horse. On the morning of the tournament, Jaemin called me. "We have a problem," he said, voice clipped. "Celine's team insists on using their equipment. Dae-hyun says it's compromised." I arrived at the auditorium and found Celine's tech crew unloading cases. Ivy wasn't there, suspended, but Celine's new assistant, a boy with an expensive haircut, smiled at me like I was a stain. "We're here to help," he said. "Meridian deserves professional streaming." Dae-hyun crouched near the cables, eyes narrowed. "Their encoder box has a hidden transmitter," he murmured to me. "It's designed to capture backstage audio and push it to a private server." My blood cooled. Backstage audio meant private conversations, staff complaints, maybe even personal data. It was a trap designed to create another scandal, another leak, another moment where I would be blamed for existing near the wires. Jaemin looked torn. Rejecting Celine's sponsorship could offend donors. Accepting it could destroy students. I stepped forward. "We'll use their cameras," I said loudly, so everyone could hear, but not their encoder. The university's IT policy requires approved equipment for data handling. Celine's assistant's smile sharpened. "Are you accusing us of violating policy?" he asked. "I'm applying policy," I replied. "If your equipment is clean, you can submit it for approval. If not, you can leave." Celine approached then, graceful as always. She looked at me with careful eyes. "Mira," she said, as if we were friends. "Why are you so hostile? We're trying to support the school." I held her gaze. "Support doesn't require secrecy," I said. "And generosity doesn't require access to other people's microphones." A murmur spread. Donors in the front row leaned toward each other. Celine's smile held, but it trembled at the edges. She was used to being adored, not questioned. "Fine," she said, voice smooth. "We'll comply." Her team swapped the encoder under supervision, and the tournament proceeded. But the attempt confirmed what I already knew. Celine's camp wasn't done. They didn't want to win. They wanted me to lose. After the tournament, a rumor surfaced online under my brand's hashtag, a leaked email, claiming Meridian Light Studio was laundering money through gold sales, linked to a black market. The post included edited screenshots of my bank statements, with numbers rearranged to look like criminal transfers. It was slick, convincing, and designed to trigger exactly one response: panic. Panic makes people confess. Panic makes people beg. Panic makes them entertaining. My chest tightened, but I didn't panic. I called Hannah and Dae-hyun. We sat around the studio table like a war council. "We respond with receipts," Hannah said. "We respond with silence," Dae-hyun countered. "And we quietly file takedowns." I thought of my grandmother's rice grains. I thought of the dean's office. I thought of the invisible comments begging for tears. "We respond with structure," I decided. I drafted a public statement. Concise, factual, unemotional. It listed my business registration, tax filings, sponsorship contracts, and gold sale receipts. It included a line: "Defamation will be pursued through legal channels." No threats, no drama, just consequence. We posted it. Then Dae-hyun sent takedown notices to the platform and the campus network. Hana contacted a journalist in the city who covered student entrepreneurship scandals. "If you want the truth," she told the journalist, "here it is, organized." The journalist published a short piece, not praising me, not romanticizing me, simply noting that the forged screenshots were inconsistent with banking formats and that my filings were public. The rumor didn't die instantly, but it weakened. People who wanted to hate me had to work harder, and laziness is a powerful ally. Celine never acknowledged the rumor publicly. She didn't have to. Her brand was innocence. Innocence never gets its hands dirty. It hires others to do it. The attack forced the university to call a board hearing about student businesses and reputation risk. It was scheduled for a Friday afternoon, when most students would be tired and willing to accept whatever decision ended the meeting quickly. The floating comments buzzed like a crowd outside a courtroom. "Trial arc. She'll be expelled. Save her. I wore a plain navy suit and carried a binder so thick it could stop a bullet. Jaemin offered to attend with me." I shook my head. "No savior optics," I said. "I walk in alone." The boardroom was cold, the kind of cold that makes you feel like your skin is unprofessional. A row of administrators sat behind a table. Dr. Pierce sat among them, smiling faintly, as if this were a seminar. I understood then. He had arranged this. He wanted me forced into public confession, forced into tears, forced into a partnership that would rehabilitate my image. I set my binder down. The chairwoman, a stern woman with silver hair, began with polite phrases about the university's image. Then Pierce leaned forward. "Ms. Lin," he said, "can you explain the origin of the gold items you have sold?" The question landed like a trapdoor. If I said gifts, they would ask from whom. If I said inheritance, they would ask for probate. If I refused, they would call it suspicious. For a moment, the impossible truth pressed against my teeth. The floating comments flared. "Tell them! Magic system reveal. They won't believe you." I exhaled and opened my binder. "Yes," I said. "I can explain the origin in terms that are verifiable." I slid forward a notarized statement from the gold exchange confirming multiple purchases over time, each recorded with identification and video logs. I slid forward a letter from an accountant confirming my business revenue and expenses. I slid forward my tax registration. "The gold items were sold legally through licensed exchanges," I said. "They are not proceeds of crime. If the university believes my income violates scholarship rules, I request a written policy citation and a formal audit process, not a rumor hearing." The chairwoman blinked. Pierce's smile faltered. He tried again. "But where did you obtain the gold originally?" He pressed, voice too eager. I met his eyes. "From personal sources not affiliated with the university," I said. "The law does not require me to disclose private donors to satisfy campus gossip." Pierce's jaw tightened. "So you admit there are donors," he said. "I admit there are customers and supporters," I replied. "The same way there are donors to Selene Gao's foundation. Should we interrogate her supporters too?" A murmur rippled down the table. Celine's foundation sat like a sacred cow. Invoking it was dangerous. I continued before Pierce could recover. "This hearing is not about legality," I said. "It's about comfort. Some people are uncomfortable with a scholarship student building resources outside traditional channels. That discomfort is not misconduct." The chairwoman held up a hand to stop Pierce. "We will focus on scholarship compliance," she said curtly. "Ms. Lin has provided documentation. Unless there is evidence of fraud, this board cannot punish her for being successful." Pierce's face stiffened. "Success," he repeated, as if the word tasted bitter. The chairwoman adjourned with a recommendation. I would submit quarterly income statements, and the university would update policy guidelines for student businesses. It was bureaucratic, but it was a win. When I walked out, my knees nearly gave out, not from fear this time, but from relief. In the hallway, Jaemin waited. I hadn't invited him, but he had come anyway, leaning against the wall like a guard who didn't want to be thanked. He raised an eyebrow. "You survived," he said. "I didn't survive," I corrected. "I negotiated." His mouth tilted into a real smile. "That's worse," he said, admiration in his tone. "For your enemies." After the hearing, Pierce stopped emailing me. Celine stopped smiling at me across rooms. The campus didn't become kind, but it became cautious. Caution is a kind of peace. My studio signed its first long-term contract with a regional apparel company that wanted styling content without influencers' scandals. Hana expanded our design packages. Daehyun automated our takedown system. I hired a third person, a law student named Noor Rahman, who knew how to turn threats into legal letters that made bullies hesitate. Noor read the confession board for fun, the way some people read horror novels. "Your school has a culture problem," she told me, matter of fact. "But culture can be fined into behaving." I laughed, surprised at the sound. It had been a long time since laughter didn't hurt. The floating comments grew quieter as my life became less melodramatic. Occasionally, a supportive line would still blink into view, and a small gold token would thud into my desk drawer. I stopped selling them immediately. Instead, I began storing them, not as wealth, but as evidence that the universe had once thrown me a rope. Maybe one day I would understand why. Maybe I wouldn't. Either way, I no longer needed to pull on it every week to keep from drowning. On the last day of the academic year, I walked across campus under jacaranda trees, blossoms staining the sidewalk purple. My dorm roommates were moving out, complaining about summer internships and flight delays. Celine's posters were being peeled down by tired staffers. Jaemin stood near the student council booth, talking to freshman recruits. He saw me and lifted a hand in greeting. I raised mine back,